I'd actually like to share some ideas with you tonight. Some ideas, some facts, some figures. I promise it won't get too boring, but we do have to talk a little bit of science. But before we do that, I'd actually like to talk a little bit about one of my favorite movies. It's a movie that I saw when I was about 10 years old, and it was called The Never-Ending Story. And what I really liked about this movie is that it really forces you to engage, just like the main character of the movie, called Bastian. It's this young boy who starts reading this book, and the book is about Atreyu, who is the hero in the book. And Atreyu rides this dragon, and he goes around, and at some point he starts to have to fight for his world. His world is called Fantasia, and it's being destroyed by this thing called the Nothing, which is really this void just slowly eating up this world. And Bastian, of course, loves this book, so he keeps reading more and more, and he gets into it, and he gets into it, until at some point he realizes he's no longer a spectator. He's become part of the book. And it's only by actually becoming part of the book that the book will have a happy ending. That's kind of how I feel about climate change. If we don't get involved, if we don't act, I know it's not going to have a happy ending. And for Suriname, that's not something we should really be thinking about too much. We just need to act. But the story starts in 1827 when Jean-Baptiste Fourier published his theory on the greenhouse effect. In essence, Mr. Fourier looked at the sun and the earth and the distance, and he said, well, that doesn't make sense. It's too far away to be this hot. So how come that we have the temperatures we do? So he did a bunch of experiments, and he ran through a number of theories. And in the end, he came up with the greenhouse effect, which really says that we have these types of gases in our atmosphere, essentially carbon dioxide, water vapor, a couple of others. And they're the ones who hold on to heat for us. If they weren't here, it'd be a whole lot colder, and it wouldn't be good for us. But it's quite amazing that nature has actually created this natural thermostat, which has this self-regulating mechanism allowing us to live here and to thrive and to live really well. So let's fast forward to 1906, where Mr. Savant Arrhenius, a Nobel laureate, publishes this book called Worlds in the Making, where he's the first one to suggest that man can actually alter the temperature of the world. How? By man-made activities, by emitting gases from burning fossil fuels, by cutting forests, a whole bunch of activities which he indicated can actually change the carbon cycle, which is regulates the amount of carbon dioxide in the air, which will then change the temperature of the Earth, which he thought isn't really that bad because he was living in a time when the population was growing and we needed more food. So let's just take a look at this. We've got Jean-Baptiste Fourier in 1827, who first talks about the greenhouse effect. Then we get Mr. Savant Arrhenius in 1906. And Mr. Arrhenius actually thought, hey, let's warm it up. This is great. We can get more food. And who knows, maybe we can even plant in the South Pole one day. So that was back then. So let's take it a little bit more modern, a little bit more modern history. President Jimmy Carter, President of the United States, he comes into office and has an energy crisis, which he thinks, well, I need energy. What am I going to do? Oh, hold on. We've got a lot of coal. Why don't we just burn the coal? We have energy. Everybody's happy, right? Let's get on to this. So the scientists hear about this, and they go nuts. They start writing reports. They start doing research. Now, of course, a lot of research had been going on for a long time, but they all get into it. So they start drilling in the South Pole to find out what's going on. They start redoing all this research. They really get into it. So all of that kind of culminates into this frenzy, which in 1992 then causes the United Nations members, just about all of them, 192 in any case, to sign the Convention on Climate Change. So everybody's there. So they're saying, well, we really need to stop any kind of catastrophic change that can happen. So 5 years later, they sign up to the Kyoto Protocol, at least quite a few of them, in which they again dedicate, we really need to stop, we're going to do better, seriously guys, we got to fix this. So, what is it that we actually need to fix, right? What exactly is the problem? So we need to look at a little bit of science. So what is this thing, carbon dioxide in the air, and how do you measure it? Well, it's measured in parts per million, okay? And parts per million, really what it talks about is how many molecules of carbon dioxide reside within 1 million parts of atmosphere. So if you got 1 million little parts of atmosphere, how many of those are carbon dioxide? So we're going to talk about that in the next few minutes, and we're going to refer to it as ppm. So how much ppm is actually bad, right? Because Arrhenius thought we should just kind of keep going on that. So how much is too bad? So James Hansen, he's a really smart guy, NASA scientist, did a bunch of research, brought together a lot of thinking, and he gave us some numbers. He started off by saying, okay, so before we started burning all of this, pre-industrial, 1750, thereabout, we were at 270 parts per million, or ppm, right? So before we're firing up all the gas engines, we're at 270 parts per million. So that's the first number. Hold on to that. Then he gives us another number. He says, all right, folks, really whatever we do, we should stay below 350. 350 isn't really a great number because that's already going to give us about 2 degrees warming. But in any case, let's not go above that. That should be kind of our goal. So then just to kind of make things clear, he says, all right, but if we go above that, mind you, if we go to 450, let's say, things are going to look really bad, all right? Because we're most likely going to have a virtually ice-free world, and with all the consequences that that entails, like super sea level rise, species dying out, probably Scene's going to have trouble finding some of his friends. A lot of bad stuff's going to happen. So where are we now? Right? Because we've gone through all this, we've had the people who discovered it, we've had the commitment from the world, everybody's saying, oh, we got to stop this. And we got the 270, the 350, the 450. Hope I'm not throwing out too many numbers here. So where are we now? So before we talk about the parts per million, first let's look at what we've been doing. So 1750, we're emitting 11 million tons of carbon dioxide. 11 million tons. 1950, we're emitting 6 billion tons of carbon dioxide. 1992, the year of the convention, we're putting out 23 billion tons of carbon dioxide. And 2010, we're up to 33.6. So that whole let's stop the emissions thing's not really working, as you can see. So what did this actually do in terms of the parts per million? Again, remember the 270, the 350, the 450. Well, when we signed the convention as a world back in 1992, we were already at 356. All right? So we were actually committing to go back in time. This year, we reached 400 parts per million. We are now at 400. So the 350, gone. 450, right around the corner. What does that mean? 4 degrees? 3, 6? We don't know. But it's a lot more than 2. That's something we're pretty sure of. So what does that mean to us here in Suriname? Because at the end of the day, this is where we live. What does all this mean to us? Well, for one thing, if you like chicken, it means you're going to have higher food prices. Why? Because the southwestern US is now in its 3rd year of drought, which has been driving up grain prices, which we need for our chicken food, which determines the price of chicken. So get ready for higher food prices. What you're seeing on the screen there is one simulation of what our city could look like at 1 meter sea level rise. So that's 1 meter. So that means we're saying goodbye to the inner city, the historical inner city, which is World Heritage. We're saying goodbye to North Paramaribo, unless we do some amazing feats in the next couple of years. And that's 1 meter. Wind. We're going to get much harder winds. A lot of us have already felt it, and it's not going to get any better. Higher temperatures. We're already 1 degree higher on average in Suriname, and it's not looking like it's going to get any better. Monsoon-like rains. You remember the short rainy season, the short dry season, long rainy season? Forget about it. You've seen the images of India, monsoon rains. That's where we're heading. Salt water. As the sea level rises, what do you think happens to the rivers? They can't stream out as much anymore. So the salt water comes in. There go some of our croplands. And this one's really scary. If the temperature keeps going up the way it has been, and the way a lot of science tells us it's going to, that means evaporation is going to go way up, which means much less water for our reservoirs as it sits, which means less energy or more cost for diesel power. So what do we, small country, 500,000 people, $5 billion in GDP, what are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you one of the things we definitely can and have to do, and that's to build on some of what we already have. And what we have is amazing. We have 14.8 million hectares of forest. That's 29.6 hectares of forest per person. It's the most in the world. We've got 236,000 cubic meters of renewable fresh water per person. It's one of the highest in the world. We've got 151 billion cubic meters of water that we're not currently using. It's going out to the ocean every year, again and again, while other parts of the world are starving and dying of thirst. We've got enormous biodiversity, helping to feed us and keeping our ecosystems alive. How about those mangroves? 100,000 hectares of mangroves, coastal mangroves protecting our shores. All of this and much more is part of our natural capital. It's what helps protect us, and it's what's going to help protect our children. We need to take care of this. All right, so how is a forest actually going to help protect us from climate change, right? How's water? How are rivers going to do that? How are the mangroves going to help us? All right, so this is what we call a set of ecosystem services. All right, so the forest delivers all of these services to us as humans. For example, maintain biodiversity, which helps us get food, provide fresh water. They help cool the air. They break the impact from winds. They can get us economic returns on carbon credits sometime in the future. Reduce local climate change. If we didn't have the trees, it'd be much worse. And they help clean polluted air and water. The mangroves, with the right infrastructure, they can help protect us against sea level rise. They help protect from erosion, and they help to ensure that our seafood is kept at levels where we can use it again and again. Our rivers provide freshwater fish, which is a vital food source for many of us, energy for our hydro dam, and multiple benefits for large parts of our population. Using these systems to help us deal with climate change better is what's called ecosystem-based climate change adaptation. And it is our best and only hope to survive this. So let me be clear on this. We cannot wait on the outside for help. We need to take care of this for ourselves. We need to get into action. We are part of nature. We live with nature. We're not above it. We're not below it. We do live off of it. And we need to treat it well. Because in a world that's 4 degrees warmer, we need to start thinking in a different way. And we need to start treating our nature differently. So when you leave here tonight, I want you to really think about this. I want you to think about what are you going to do to ensure that your children, who are going to grow up in a 4-degree warmer world than your parents did, are going to survive and are going to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, John.